Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. This will be our last shiur until after Pesach. Bezrat Hashem will reconvene after Pesach. Today, as always, we learned Lilu Nishmat Avigdor Chai Avram Ben Mertzi Rachalea, Lilu Nishmato. In addition to that, today we also learned for the Refuah Shlema for Mindel Rezel Bat Tzvia, and all Chole Yisrael. They shall have a Refuah Shlema. Tov, we are on page 72 in the small version, and we will begin with the paragraph that says, Omnam Kamosha Dibarnu B'mitzvot. We're talking about now, we started the topic last week of midot, meaning character traits, how we measure ourselves, how others measure us, these midot. And just like he said, just like when it came to mitzvot that we have to do and mitzvot that we have to be careful to not do, and all the different subcategories, we have to be naki from all of that, so too when it comes to our character traits. He's going to talk about 4 basic character traits that are insidious, that are sometimes prevalent among some types of people, and get into some detail. And I'll be honest with you, I was looking forward very much to this section of the book, because when we get to the topic of ka'as, or anger, I mentioned this, I think, months ago, I'm going to give a special shiur, kind of a repeat performance of a shiur I gave a couple of years back, 2-3 years ago, having to do with anger, and it was based on one word in Mesilat Yesharim. And when we get to that, that'll be only after Pesach. I have to tell you that now, so we have some reason to come back after Pesach. So let's begin where it says, Omnam kemo shedibarnu b'mitzvot. Just like we already mentioned that the person has to cleanse himself of any potential problem of mitzvot in any subcategories, the things that people usually can trip up on. We're going to talk about some main areas of midot. Look, you could there are plenty of books about midot, but he's going to touch on certain specific ones in a little bit more depth. Because they're pretty common, we're used to them, we encounter these problems often. And they are haga'ava, haughtiness, ka'as, anger, kin'ah, jealousy, ta'ava, desires. And each one of those will be discussed in depth, so I'm not going to get into any details right now. All these character traits, all these midot, really are pretty bad, and that their evil is also well known. He doesn't have to bring psukim and prove that they're bad. We know that someone who's full of himself, someone who's a narcissist and thinks they're the best at anything, a person who gets angry all the time, or we'll see the different subdivisions of anger, a person who's a jealous individual, a person who has desires beyond that which Hashem gave him to within permissible areas, they're bad. It's not okay. They themselves, those character traits in the title, the main title themselves, are bad, and also the subcategories are. Why he says in general, why are these bad? What's wrong with being haughty? What's wrong with being a jealous person? What's wrong with all the anger? Because they bring you to other areas of averot. If I said, what's better? Should a person be an angry person, or should a person eat treif chazer? Well, obviously better to be an angry person than eating treif chazer. But it's not a choice. You don't have such a choice. You have to do both. You have to not be an angry individual. We'll see what that means when we get to it. And also you can't eat treif. So, but he does say that one thing can lead to another, and some of these lead to other problems in life. When it comes to ga'ava, haughtiness, pride, doesn't mean one who should be, that you always should be proud of yourself. That's not what we're talking about. Talking excessive pride, and he's going to detail what that means. It says in the pasuk, he's not using this pasuk to show you that haughtiness is no good. He's using this pasuk to show that these midot, these character traits, these issues bring you to bad areas. He says very clearly in Dvarim, that a person who's haughty will forget Hashem. Why? Because a person might say, it doesn't say it here, in the Torah it says there in the continuation, look at what I was able to accomplish. Look at my home, look at my children, look at my wealth, look at my cars, look at my vacations. Look at what I was able to accomplish. This is me, me, me. And where does it stem from? Haughtiness. Why are you forgetting Hashem? What does that mean, you're forgetting Hashem? Because you're forgetting that absolutely every single possible thing you have, whether it's the breath you just took, or it's the shekel you have in the bank, or it's the car you own, or your house that you have, and your possessions, and your children, and everything you have is all from Hashem. And as soon as you lose sight of that and think it's because of you, then you've missed the boat. Now, it does not mean you shouldn't say, I'm proud of what I've done. I'm very proud personally of what I've been able to accomplish so far. I mean, there's a lot I need to take care of for myself, a lot I need to still do in life, I hope. But at the same time, I could look around and I say, I'm proud of some of the things I've done. Doesn't mean I'm haughty. I say, well, look at how fantastic I am. But when I do, if I do that, then I leave God behind. Whoever gets really angry, it should be in your eyes as if you served avodah zarah, as if you served idolatry or idols. Obviously, this needs to be a little bit more explained. I will spend considerable amount of time on that when we get to that topic. When it comes to kinan ta'ava, jealousy and lust or desire, shaninu behedu, we learned clearly, explicitly in Pirkei Avot, hakinah v'ta'ava v'hakavod motzi'in et adam min ha'olam. Jealousy, desires, seeking out honor, help bring a person out of this world, meaning they can lead to their death. Now, for some of you may remember, I used to give, I have, hopefully maybe next year I'll start it again if Corona permitting. I gave for a number of years a series of shiurim in the winter on Motzei Shabbat, 3 weeks in a row usually, and it's usually at the home of the Maltz family. Topics, various topics, and one of them had to do with this. It had to do not just with kas, but kina, ta'ava, and I quoted, I don't remember who said it, said a very scary thing. We translate this last sentence we just said as, it says, hakina v'ta'ava v'hakavod, these three things, that jealousy, lust, and seeking extra honor, it helps a person leave this world, meaning that they die, could potentially die because of it. This commentary, he brought proof, I forgot where it was, said it's not just that they help you leave this world, it's that they accompany you to the next world. That kinat ta'ava and kavod, that black mark on your neshama, so to speak, on who you are, that stays with you in the next world and has to be somehow excised in the next world as well. It's a little bit of a scary thought. Omnam, however, but just like we said, by all the isurim and all the other things you're not supposed to do, and all the things you are supposed to do, that you have to be careful, not just the big things, but also all the little things. Same thing over here. All these are what the translation would be, a deviant offshoot of a stronger vine. It's a mashal, a parable. Says, okay, now let's go back and deal with these items one at a time. And he's going to deal today with, I don't know if we'll get through the whole thing, but we're going to deal with ga'ava, pride or haughtiness. The Kotzker Rebbe, Tzaddik Kadosh Livracha, had many pithy sayings. He's very famous for sayings that he did, and he said. One of them is the following. He said that a person should carry in their pocket a piece of paper in each pocket. In one pocket, it should say that the Mishnah that says Bishvili nivra ha'olam, that for me the world was created, and in the other that pocket should be the pasuk which says V'anochi afar va'efer. When Avraham Avinu is talking to Hashem, when he's negotiated with Hashem to save Sodom, Avraham says, "Allow me, please, to continue talking, and I'm only dust and ashes." The other extreme is the Mishnah. It says not only that a person should think this, but chayav adam lomar, a person has a chiyuv to say, "Bishvili nivra olam." The world was created just for me. So talk about really opposing ideas. And why does the Kotzker say you should have one of them in each pocket? He says you have to be able to know when to pull out which piece of paper. Generally speaking, we have to go through life. Who am I? Right? I can say, well, look what I accomplished, look what I've done. But But there are times when I have to recognize that every single thing Hashem is doing, the sun came out today. It's nice and warm out today. I have the right, I'm allowed to say, Hashem created that sun just for me. So today will be comfortable for me, because that's relating to Hashem on a one-to-one basis, that everything that Hashem does is for the world, but it's also for me personally. It's for you personally. He says the trick is knowing when to pull out that piece of paper. When someone says, wow, look at that guy got a PhD in rocket science. There's no such thing, I don't think. But right, so that he can say like, yeah, look what I was able to accomplish, and all, which is true. You can be proud of yourself. But when he says, because now I'm the best and I'm the top of the pile, that's where you start to get yourself into trouble. But you also can't be the other end of the spectrum and have false humility. What does that mean? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. It says in the Torah, Va'ish Moshe anav mikol adam, that Moshe was the most humble of all people. Does that mean that Moshe went into his tent at night and said, going to his wife, Tzipora, listen up. I am like the lowest of low. I am nobody. I haven't accomplished anything in my life. My sandals don't fit properly. I can't speak properly. It's like I can't even find my way to Israel. I am literally not. Of course not. Of course that's not what it meant. He was an anav. And anav meant that Moshe Rabbeinu was fully aware of what he was able to accomplish. He was able to survive. He was able to thrive. But he understood that absolutely everything he accomplished was only because of the grace of Hashem. Because Hashem is the one who gave him the tools. Hashem is the one who guided him. Hashem is the one who helped him and literally put the words in his mouth. So that's led him to this point where he knows what he was. He knew what he was, but understood everything came from Hashem. That's not ga'ava. That's not haughtiness. That's how it should be. Any one of us who's done anything in our lives, and all of us have done things that we could be I hope we should be very proud of in life. Unfortunately, we've also done things that we shouldn't be proud of, but we've done things that we're proud of. So, and we're allowed to be, but at the same time, we have to also acknowledge that we were able to accomplish them only because of Hashem. So let's go on to this paragraph. In a klal inyan hagava huza, the general idea of gava is shahadam machashiv atzmo beatzmo ubilvavo yidameh kilo nava tila. I deserve honor. I'm the best. I deserve this. That's how I feel. And this could come from many different possible reasons, that a person feels he deserves all the honor he gets. Some people think they're very smart. Some think they're very good looking. Others think they're very honorable, that they deserve this honor. Others think they're very important. And there are those who think they're very smart. The difference between sechel and chokhmah. Sechel is more like intuition and intellect and being able to understand things. And chacham is having a wealth of knowledge per se. And there's different ways to describe them. But the idea is, the general rule is, everything good in this world, if you think that it's because of you, that you're the one, you're the top, you're the best, you're the one deserving all these reasons of respect, that you have fallen to the pit of ga'ava, of haughtiness and pride. There are people like this. There are people who feel that they deserve this honor. There are people who deserve they think, and sometimes we'll even say they're smarter than everybody else. They're better at something than anybody else. True story. This was before my bar mitzvah. I was probably about 10 years old. I was in a shul, sitting with my father, Zichrono Libracha, and something happened. And he said to me, don't ever forget this. This is a good lesson in life. Well, here I am, 53 years later. Yeah, 63. And I haven't forgotten it. I was a little kid. What happened? It was Shabbat morning. There was a man in the shul who always, when he got called up to the Torah, was called up for Shlishi. Now, generally speaking, on a Shabbat, Shlishi and Shishi, the third Aliyah and the sixth Aliyah, are considered the more honorific, more mechubad Aliyah to get. And every time he got called up for Shlishi. And this man truly, 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 I even recognized it as a 10-year-old, was a true Balgaiva. He always felt of himself that he was the best, the top. He ended up in jail many years later, but that's a different story. So they called him up for Revi'i, the fourth bracha, the fourth aliyah. And he walked up and in Yiddish said, what bracha do you make on Revi'i? Meaning, Revi'i? Shlishi, I get Shlishi. What do you give me Revi'i? I didn't even know what bracha to make on that. That is the height of Ga'ava. Why do I say it's the height of Ga'ava? Because what's he about to do? He's about to go up to the Torah and have someone read the Torah, the word of Hashem, and he's going to be the Balgaiva. He's going to be the one who's going to say, what kind of brother you make on Revi'i? It's pretty sad and scary. True story. Another one, and this, I think I've told some of you this story before. I know I have. I'm going to mention it anyways because it fits in here. When I was learning yeshiva in Chicago, so in high school, as is true in many yeshivot, so the Rabbeim and the Rosh Yeshiva would sit in what they call in Yiddish the Mizrach, the side and the Mizrach of the room, facing where in the front. There's all of them sitting with their stenders and all facing the students, and everyone stands up, and it's time to say Shemona Esrei. And normally when you say Shemona Esrei, you're supposed to, if you didn't know this, you're supposed to look behind you. When you finish Shemona Esrei, you're supposed to see if everyone behind you if the person behind you is finished, because you can't walk back in Shemona Esrei to end your Shemona Esrei until the person behind you is finished. So that's what you do. You look behind you. So there's this one Rebbe who, when he finished Shemona Esrei, he didn't look behind him. He looked to the side to make sure that all the other Rebbeim were finished saying Shemona Esrei, and only then would he walk out of Shemona Esrei, because he needed to be the last, so he could show off that he was the longest Shemona Esrei that it could be said. Sad. It's sad. That's what I call fake frum. We'll come back to that topic too. We've got a lot of fakers in our religion, as in every religion, and in every profession. You have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just because a person wears a kippah on their head does not mean that they're going to be the best upstanding citizen. And just because a person doesn't have a kippah on their head doesn't mean they're not going to be a very good person. It has nothing to do with anything. Next paragraph. Sorry, I'm still the same paragraph. Let me see where it was. Right. Once a person kind of gets it into him that he deserves this honor because he's so important, there's only one possible outcome that can come for that. Sorry, not only one thing. Many different things could happen as a result, even maybe opposite results. So he's saying, and he's going to expand on this soon, that this one act of being a Balgaiva, a person who is haughty and into themselves, actually leads to multiple problems, not just one. They all result in the same problem, though, eventually. Hine, next paragraph. Hine yimatzeh ge'achad. He's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 different personalities or types of haughtiness. First one. Hine yimatzeh ge'achad. One type of person who's haughty. She'achshov belibo. He thinks. Because he is worthy of praise and he's unique and special as far as he's concerned. He also has to comport himself in this very haughty way. Whether he's walking somewhere, he's sitting somewhere, getting up, how he speaks, and with all of his actions, he takes his time, he walks. He lies on his back. He just gets up very slowly. He doesn't talk to just anybody, just with those people are important. You'll only talk even the important people, just little things. In his actions, in his movements, in his actions, in his eating and drinking, in his clothing, in every way of his life. He will act with heaviness. He will call besaro oferet, as if his whole body was lead. Even ochol, and that as if his whole body was like stone, or it was like sand. What does that mean? I have seen with my own eyes, I'm sure you also have, unfortunately, that a person, let's go back to the shul example, person getting called up to the Torah, a person who may feel that they're extra super special and important. When they get called up, Yamod, so-and-so, and so-and-so, Shlishi, right? So now he's getting called up. And he stands up, looks around, slowly moves towards the shulchan, because he's important. I need people to look at me. I need to be on stage, so to speak. And again, missing the boat completely, because the halacha says when you're called up, by the way, if you do not know this, halacha says when you get called up to the Torah, you go the shortest route, and quickly, and when you leave, when you finish, you're supposed to go back the longer route, back to your seat. Same thing is true when you take the Sefer Torah. You take it on the shortest route to the shulchan. When you bring it back, you take it on the longer route. If they're equal, they're equal. But everything, all the person's movements, everything's just, he's like lead, just because he's like, everything's about him. Now, interestingly enough, for those of you who've learned Tanya with me, or learned Tanya on your own, you'll note that here he's making the connection between haughtiness and earth, like the heaviness of earth. In Tanya, he uses the term that haughtiness comes from fire. And it's just different approaches. So that's one kind, person who thinks that he's God's gift to earth, to man. There are unfortunately many men that think they're God's gift to women, and some women who think they're God's gift to men. Also very sad. There are other types of people who are haughty. Since he's due this honor and respect and this praise, the whole world should tremble before him. And they should all tremble, and people should all tremble before him. How should person even, it should almost collapse before he comes to ask him a question and talk to him and get something from him. And if they will deign or dare rather to try to go up that mountain, so to speak, to him, to talk to him, they'll be scared by his voice. The way he will relate to that person will be just out of complete, not even anger, but like, how dare you even ask me something? There have been times, I'm sure all of you wanted to ask a person a question, and you're kind of nervous to ask. It could be because you're afraid of the answer. It could be afraid you thought that person was not approachable. You could be because you're insecure, whatever it might be, a whole host of reasons. What I have found over the years is that, I've been, I don't know about afraid, but nervous to ask somebody something because I felt that they were unapproachable. It turns out that it's exactly the opposite. Sometimes a person might give off this vibe, or it's just self-perceived or perceived by me or others that that person might be unapproachable. But in fact, they're very approachable. I'll give you an example. A number of years back in Chicago, Rav Yisrael Lau Shlita came to Chicago for a Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday. He spoke in multiple shuls. And it just so happened that Friday night, he was going to be by us for davening, for Sudat Shabbat, and then he was going to speak Oneg Shabbat, it's the winter time. And we had over the years in our shul a number of dignitaries, including back then when Joe Lieberman was on the vice presidential ticket. He actually came to Chicago. He was in our shul for Shabbat, which was really cool. It was different. It could be the future vice president of the United States. Thank goodness he wasn't, for various reasons. And I never really got too, it was nice to have somebody, but I never got nervous about someone being the shul who was a dignitary. But I had to say that, back then, before he even came into Chicago, I was getting a little nervous. But I had the former chief rabbi of Israel, whom I had complete respect for, was going to come not only to the show, but I was going to talk to him and sit with him at our table. And like, I was actually nervous. And then someone said to me, you know what he does when he gets up in the morning? I said, no. He says, well, he puts on his pants one leg at a time, just like you. And it kind of brought it down to reality. And then it turned out he sat at the table with me and my family Friday night. It's like talking to a friend. It was just so easy to talk to. Sometimes we build up this idea in our heads, and it's not good. It's good to have the respect. There's no question you have to have the respect. But to then to put it on a different, that they're in a different planet, that you can't approach them, then that almost, for some people, not for him, chas v'shalom, but for some people, that feeds the ego of, you see, people don't even come to me because they're even afraid. This paragraph is saying they're even afraid to come to me because I'm so out there, I'm so great and so important. There's another type of person who is haughty. That he is so important and he is so honored to the point where he and honor are, so to speak, they're inseparable. He doesn't need additional honor. He's got all the honor he needs because it's he and honor, they're the same thing. And in order to show that, what does he do? He acts as if he's very humble. He pretends to be this super humble person. It's immeasurable. He's so humble. But inside he says, I'm so important and so out there. I don't need any more kavod. I can just overlook it. It's too much. I am so overflowing with respect. I'm so important. I've heard this as a joke, but I will tell you, I heard this following statement from someone who actually, truly meant what he said. Someone came to me once in Chicago, and he said the following sentence. I thought he was joking, and I laughed. And he said, what are you laughing about? I'm serious. He said, if I could only be a little bit more of an anav, if I could just be a little bit more humble, I would be the best anav in the world. I'd be the most humble person that exists. So I said to him, you hear what you're saying? Yes, I do. I said, do you realize that's the exact opposite of anava? It's the exact opposite of humility. You're praising yourself about your humility? That's anava? That's humility. And he was serious. I'm not joking. I knew this man many, many years. And, some people make such a joke. Yes, it's amazingly ironic, Dave. Correct. But it's true. I knew him for many years, and he was, unfortunately, very full of himself. Now, sometimes you find people who are very boastful and full of themselves, and they sometimes have a reason to be, meaning there's at least some legitimacy to them having a feeling that they're very important. Doesn't mean it's okay, but the other people who have this feeling about themselves, and he's kind of mentioning this kind of person here, and this is who this individual was. He wasn't like that. He didn't have what to be as boastful for. He did accomplish things in his life, as hopefully everyone does. But he just thought he could be just a little bit more of an anav. He'd be the best anav that there was. Next category. There's another type of haughtiness, or haughty individual. He wants to be celebrated. Person needs their name in lights. They need to be the center of attention. He doesn't say this is my words now. It's not enough that they praise this individual about the things he believes about himself. He rather they also want him to say, he also wants people to say about him, wow, like I said before, he's the most humble guy. Oh my gosh, this guy has 73 degrees, and he's this, and he's got that, and he's got money, he's got beauty, and everything, and he's still an anav. That's what he wants to hear about himself. And he says, he becomes haughty about his humility. That's the irony, as you said, Dave. It's funny. I've used this copy of Mesilat Yesharim for many years. Just a second, let me take my glasses here a second. You see what this says? A second. I'm going to read this in 1 second. My wife, that's what I was reading from there. That I've been using this copy for many years. And over the years, to different people, different classes, I write little notes on the side. I didn't even realize I'd written on the side about if I were only more humble. So it was in my head. Okay, so let's see. Harry says, my wife tells a similar story about the Baal Gaiva. In the shul in which she grew up, a self-important man was offered Revi'i. He got so insulted, he walked out of shul. Wow. Michelle turned to her father and asked, what's the matter with Revi'i? He's not good enough for him. Her father replied, worse than that, he permished or shamed the Sefer Torah. Exactly. It's the same thing, 100%. Where people think that they are standing up for their own honor and their self-respect. That's not the right word, because self-respect you do need to stand up for. But their own honor, they think that they're so important. Very often it comes at the expense of Hashem and Torah. Yes, thank you for sharing that story. And he wants honor for what? The fact he's running away from honor, he wants to be honored for that. You hear that foolishness in that head. He'll say, oh, please, I'm nothing more than just an amoeba. I'm nothing. I'm the bottom of the barrel. His purpose being, of course, to show, look how humble I am. He won't want any titles of grandeur, of greatness. But at the same time, he says to himself, there is no one smarter or more humble than me in the whole world. You know, sometimes you read books in the area of Musar, of how you're supposed to act and how you're supposed to be. And you say, like, okay, there can't be people like that, but he's got to write these things. Sadly, there are people like this. These type of people, that even though they may show themselves as being somewhat humble, they does not take away the potential pitfalls. In other words, okay, so he shows at least he's being an anav, but it still leads to other pitfalls. Because what happens is that without even realizing it, their ga'ava will come out. Like a flame that comes out from among coals. I'm sure you've seen, if you've ever had a charcoal barbecue, or if you made a campfire where it looks like the fire's out, it's smoldering, and all of a sudden it reignites. Yeah. So he's saying something like this, and is a famous mashal in Bamidbar Rabbah. It says as follows: the Chachamim gave a following parable. Mashal bayit malei tevin. It's similar to a house, a fancy schmancy house that's filled with straw. And the house had holes in it, and straw used to come out of those holes. After some time, so after a while, all this straw came coming out. Everyone knew that at the end of the day that the house was just a house of straw. So too in this case, the person who pretends to be an anav, pretends to be humble, when in fact he's a Baal Gaiva, they cannot really hide that fact forever. And their twisted, wrong, warped approach or knowledge, ideas, is going to come out. But rather, we should know that their anava is fake. It's an illusion, and it's flawed. What does that mean? I've talked about before. I even have a note here in my book from years ago called Fake From, which I talked about. Fake From. Let me see. I've got one more comment here. Okay, we'll look at this after also. What is fake from? We talked about that when we were learning about Gezel Dat. So let's say someone I know is going to be coming over here. I'm in the middle of watching a show on Netflix, and I know that one of you is coming over to pick up something. Oh, I don't see me watching Netflix. He may know I watch it, but I don't need to see me watching it. So I take out a Gemara, I put Gemara on the table, I take a Rashba, I take a Shelot and Shuvot book, and I open up a bunch of stuff, and the guy walks in like he must think to himself, wow, what a Talmud Chacham. Okay, half of them are upside down, but that's a different story. Okay, so that's Gezel Dat, but it's also trying to show that I need to make it feel for myself, because if people think I'm a Talmud Chacham, I have to make it look like I'm a Talmud Chacham. If I have a PhD in this, I have to act like I have a PhD in that. So last night, I was having trouble sleeping. That's really unusual for me. Thank God. So I opened my phone and I went on YouTube, and it gives you like suggestions of things. So usually what I look at is not necessarily, it could be funny stuff or just studio just to get through a few minutes of time. And how he popped up was I don't remember his name, some Rav who was giving a hesped for Rav Kanievsky Zichr Tzadik V'Kadash Livracha. And he told a number of stories. First, he was a magnificent speaker. He's told some great stuff. But he told something that was very interesting and made me think about it just now. I'll tell it to you very briefly. Now, for those of you who don't know, Rav Kanievsky Zatzal, every Pesach, every year, would make a siyum. Very nice. I make a siyum almost every year too, right? So what's the big deal? Well, my siyum was on a Masechta, one book of Gemara. His siyum was the entire Shas Babli, the entire Shas Yerushalmi, the entire Sifra, Sifrei, Zohar, Rambam, Tur, Shulchan Aruch. There was something else I forgot. There's another thing. In other words, what takes a lifetime for most people to even do once, he did once a year. So the story is told, it's a true story. And I don't remember the name of the players. They were in the base medrash of a yeshiva. And there's a couple of guys, they're sitting there supposed to be learning, but they were battling. They were just wasting time. And they're learning Maseches Nedarim, one of the harder Masechtot. And then Rosh Hashiva walked in, and all of a sudden they start chuckling like this. And the guy starts going, Tanu Rabbanan. The Tanu Rabbanan is an expression of Gemara that means our rabbis taught, and it's usually an introduction to a statement of a Mishnah, a Braita. Tanu Rabbanan, Tanu Rabbanan. Rosh Hashiva walked over to them and said, FYI, nowhere in the Nedarim does it say Tanu Rabbanan. It's the only Masech that doesn't say it. Okay, so they're busted. So the story got its way to Rav Kanievsky. Rav Kanievsky says, well, Rosh Hashiva was right and not 100% right. So I said, what does that mean? He says, well, it doesn't say Tanu Rabbanan, but one place in Masechet Nedarim, it says Dit Tanu Rabbanan. That our rabbis learned. So maybe they were saying Dit Tanu Rabbanan. So the point being was that on the tip of his fingers, these things are able to just pop out from him. We've seen stories one after another, where people would bump into him and see him, ask him a question. I need a source for X. He'd say, no, not Shami, not Bavli, not that. Like it's going, he's in his mind, he's able to see everything as we would just look at a box of, who knows, of ice cream bars. Say, okay, there's 5 ice cream bars there. And we know that. He knew where Shas, everything. Kol Torah Kula. Did he have a reason? Did he have a right to think about himself? Wow, I'm pretty good. Of course. Do you think he felt that way? I'm sure he knew who he was. He understood of his abilities. Do you think he walked around like that? Look how important I am. I've watched videos with kids. I've said this before. When there are 40, 50 kids coming from the Talmud Torah to sit and to talk to him, give him Shalom Aleichem, they would stand around the table while he was learning. He didn't even know they were there. He was in a different planet, different world. He wasn't even, if it had nothing to do with Torah, he didn't have anything to want to do with it even. So he had the right to be a true person of Ga'ava, filled with it. Gedol Hador, knowledge that we can't even begin to understand. And yet, he was known also as a very humble individual. That's one of the reasons we call some of these people Gedolim. There's some people Gedolim, it's a term that's used, meaning these great people, not such Gedolim. Okay? But there are true Gedolim out there, a handful. And those people are whom we have to look for true lessons, not just in what they teach, but how they act. And that's part of what Mesilat Yesharim is about right here, this particular section. It's not just about how he puts his tefillin on. It's not just about how he learns 100,000, blad Gemara a week. Well, it wasn't. It's how he talked to his wife. It's how he talked to the person in the street. It's how he, etc. The midot. Because they are as important, if not more important sometimes, than the actual mitzvot and how we do them. Okay, we're going to stop here because he has a couple more types, and then he's going to get into Kas, which I'll deal with after Pesach. So let me mark this down here. I wanted to wish you all a Chag Sameach v'Kasher. Just mention one thing. I'm going to post, besides this video in our group, last night I had the opportunity to speak through Linda Lafazan's monthly Rosh Chodesh Shiur to give insights, ideas on the Haggadah, and also about the Seder itself in general. I will also post that in the groups, in the various groups that I have. If you have a chance, you can take a look at that. Fast forward, put it on double speed if you don't want to hear my voice droning on and on. In the meantime, just wish all of you a Chag Sameach v'Kasher. Should be a great Chag, and just enjoy. Try to reduce the stress. For those of you who will be here, enjoy it. Those of you who are going away, enjoy it. Wherever you're going to be, just make it the best Chag you can. Have a wonderful day, everybody.